Good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you here today. And perhaps the good news is you don't need to come back next week. So, oh. Today is our fourth session. Let's see, you've got a copy. Today is our fourth session, and the topic du jour is the doctrine of the Trinity. Rules for speaking Christianly about God. We've been talking about a variety of things regarding God talk, and there's probably no theological doctrine that has created more heat and perhaps less light than the doctrine of the Trinity. And so we're going to be dealing some with that today. At the end of the session, there will be a chance to deal with any miscellaneous questions, concerns that have developed during this whole series. So if you have certain things you want to pick up on, please be ready to share those later in our session. There is a handout over there on the table that contains some material that we're going to be dealing with today. From the Athanasian Creed that was put together late 5th, 6th century, primarily used only within the Western Church, meaning Western Church as opposed to churches that are affiliated with Eastern Orthodoxy. Whoever wants to be saved should above all cling to the Catholic faith. Whoever does not guard it whole and inviolable will doubtless perish eternally. Now, this is the Catholic faith. We worship one God in Trinity and the Trinity in unity, neither confusing the persons nor dividing the divine being. For the Father is one person, the Son is another, and the Spirit is still another. But the deity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is one, equal in glory, co-eternal in majesty. What the Father is, the Son is, and so is the Holy Spirit. Uncreated is the Father, uncreated is the Son, uncreated is the Spirit. The Father is infinite, the Son is infinite, the Holy Spirit is infinite. Eternal is the Father, eternal is the Son, eternal is the Spirit. And yet there are not three eternal beings, but one who is eternal. As there are not three uncreated and unlimited beings, but one who is uncreated and unlimited. Almighty is the Father, almighty is the Son, almighty is the Spirit. And yet there are not three almighty beings, but one who is almighty. Thus the Father is God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God. And yet there are not three gods, but one God. Thus the Father is Lord, the Son is Lord, the Holy Spirit is Lord. And yet there are not three Lords, but one Lord. As Christian truth compels us to acknowledge each distinct person as God and Lord, so Catholic religion forbids us to say that there are three gods or lords. The Father was neither made nor created nor begotten. The Son was neither made nor created, but was alone begotten of the Father. The Spirit was neither made nor created, but is proceeding from the Father and the Son. Thus, there is one Father, not three fathers, one Son, not three sons, one Holy Spirit, not three spirits. And in this Trinity, no one is before or after, greater or less than the other, but all three persons are in themselves co-eternal and co-equal. And so we must worship the Trinity in unity, and the one God in three persons. Whoever wants to be saved should think thus about the Trinity.
Well, that's clear.
Ah, yes, yes.
By the context in which there was the evolution of the three components of God.
I will not. And I'll explain why not. There are a number of Christian denominations that are creedal churches that focus particularly on creed, Apostles' Creed, Nicene Creed, a few, at least give lip service to the Athanasian Creed, of which I just read half.
Oh dear.
There is another half that deals specifically with the figure of Jesus and the doctrine of the incarnation. And it similarly is structured like this, full of all sorts of detail. But the United Church of Christ is not a creedal church. The United Church of Christ does not have a set of theological creeds that are at the heart of it, in which there is frequent reference back to it. Creeds are not normally used on a regular basis within the United Church of Christ. And since that is not the kind of framework in which Countryside Community Church functions, I am not going to spend a lot of time dealing with background of development of the various things, because there would be a number of things that UCC folks would likely differ with in terms of various creedal statements. Now, the United Church of Christ and, frankly, all other Christian churches have been shaped by these creeds. There are, if you go to the United Church of Christ website, you will see a statement of belief for United Church of Christ, but it doesn't function in the same way that creeds do in a number of other denominations. I am going to explain really two different ways in which Trinity language has been used within Christianity. And I'm going to basically be following one of those paths in terms of talking about the doctrine of the Trinity, and we'll be pointing out why we are not going to be looking at the other one. My grandmother was a licensed preacher in this little tiny evangelical / fundamentalistic denomination in which I was raised. A licensed preacher there. One summer, this is while I was in college, she came to spend the summer living with my family. My grandfather had just died, and So for that summer, Grandma was present with us in that particular denomination and our home church. Hey, it was church twice on Sunday, once in the middle of the week. And on Sunday evenings, the service was less formal than Sunday mornings, but there was still a sermon that was given a little more informally than on Sunday morning. But one Sunday evening, my family, including my grandmother, was present for the Sunday evening service. And the pastor had the misfortune of mentioning the word Trinity during his sermon. Now, you got to understand, my grandmother stood maybe this tall. She weighed, maybe soaking wet, about 90 pounds. Skinny little woman. But when the pastor mentioned Trinity, in passing, this wasn't his major point to talk about the Trinity, but he just mentioned that as he was talking. My grandmother stood up in her pew. And despite her lack of stature and lack of weight, she had a voice that could fill a gymnasium. And she stood up and proceeded to rip the pastor up one side and down the other, and to indicate how non-biblical the doctrine of the Trinity was, and to go on and on and on. Now remember, this is in the middle of the sermon, to go on and on and on about why the doctrine of the Trinity should never be talked about within church. My grandmother did not like the doctrine of the Trinity. And that's putting it mildly. Now, I don't share the same view of the doctrine of the Trinity that my grandmother does, but she had a number of accurate statements that she was making during that interrupted service, the interrupted sermon. But doctrine of the Trinity, okay, really has, although it is strikingly present in much of Christianity, it is not universal. And there are a number of Christian denominations that view the doctrine of the Trinity as really, really, really problematic.
In what way?
Well, one of the key issues is that the doctrine of the Trinity is something that never appears within the Bible. And I'll hit that in a moment. I'm going to run through just a few slides before we get there. But the problematic of where this thing comes from is part of the issue. Brief description of what the doctrine of the Trinity is, apart from reading through all of that stuff in the Athanasian Creed that I started this session with. One God, three persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Persons co-equal, co-eternal. One God, three persons. Some things that are important to recognize. God is not, and the doctrine of the Trinity does not claim that God is, a committee of three individuals. That's not what God is. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are not three parts of God. God is undivided. God is also not a math or logic problem of how three can be one or one can be three. That's not the issue either. A lot of times when doctrine of the Trinity is talked about, and in a number of liturgical churches, such as Roman Catholic, Episcopalian / Anglican, Lutheran, there is a particular day in the church year that is called Trinity Sunday. It's always the Sunday right after Pentecost Sunday. And one of the frequent things that occurs on Trinity Sunday is a focus on the Trinity as an expression of the mystery of God. But there are real problems in terms of how the term mystery is used. Mystery should not be understood as a grand excuse for our being real sloppy with our thinking. Mystery, as used within Christian theology, is not a term used for talking about a problem that needs to be solved, but rather a recognition that God is always more than our concepts or our language about God, as I've been emphasizing during the last 3 weeks. The mystery related to the doctrine of the Trinity is not is about what we do know about God, not what we don't know about God. And mystery, as used within Christian theology, is frequently used for talking about these things that are known, but gee, are kind of awe-inspiring. To the mystery of love. How is it that someone loves me? How is it that my spouse loves me? And anyway, one should never answer the question, why do you love me? Do not do that. Because once you start dealing with that, you're backing yourself into a corner really quickly. Mystery, yes, there are genuine mysteries about relating to God. But all too often on Trinity Sunday, sermons tend to go through rather a lot of gymnastics of talking about how one can be three and three can be one and such things. And no, that's not where you want to go. There are two major types of Trinity language. First of those on the left is the economic Trinity. And economic trinity is just an expression that came to be used for talking about God in relationship to the created world, to humanity. How is it that humans come to know God? And thus, in the economic trinity language, we describe this as bottom-up language. We're at the bottom, okay? And how is it that we come to know anything about God? We start with just the human processes of learning, of knowing. And that's a really useful way of dealing with things. In terms of how I prefer to go about doing theology, to be able to talk about how we make any kind of affirmation about God. That's a really valuable kind of thing. To go through the process of what Mark was asking about a few moments ago, talking about how did these various understandings come about? That's all extremely valuable, because when we see how certain kinds of doctrines were put together, looking at the kinds of questions that were being asked and attempting to be answered, that's really a useful way of understanding things. In terms of bottom-up thinking, dealing with the doctrine of the Trinity, and specifically talking about the economic Trinity, we focus on the fact that we only know God through our relationship with God. It's not that we somehow come with built-in ideas about God that are all pre-made. Historically speaking, all God language, including language about the Trinity, began as reflections on people's relationship with God. Immanent Trinity, however, is talking about God as God is in God's self. Okay? And frequently, in terms of talking about immanent Trinity, you'll find all sorts of comments about the eternal interrelationships of Father, Son, Holy Spirit through all eternity. In this kind of approach, which, by the way, is the way ultimately Christianity came to deal with doctrine of the Trinity, rather than focusing on economic Trinity. But, okay, they begin with basically a God's eye view of Trinitarian language, in which somehow we get a peek at what God was thinking, doing, etc., from all eternity. And no, whenever you hear people talking about God decided to send Jesus, how does anyone know that? Okay, you've got heaven bugged or something, and are finding out stuff that isn't available by any kind of normal means. So immanent Trinity language is all top-down kind of thing. The doctrine of the Trinity is simply a given. You got it, you accept it, and yes, 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 yes.
Denny,
Yes.
does that top-down approach describe Genesis?
If we were looking at the story of creation, or the stories of creation in the book of Genesis. Yes, there's a good deal of top-down kind of things, as though somehow we're privy to the story. And frankly, anytime a story is being told, hey, somebody's providing us this material all pre-made. But where did that story come from? Okay, how did people come to make this particular story as opposed to that particular story? The story, once it's put together, yes, has this sense of aha, now I know. But somewhere the story gets produced along the line and is not just innately stuck in our head. But the big problem with imminent Trinity language is, how does anybody know that? When we start looking at that material, one frequent response, how do we know? The Bible tells me so. But in the case of doctrine of the Trinity, we're going to find ourselves really in a pickle with that, because the Bible doesn't tell us so. And we find out that, somewhere along the line, people have taken this and this and this and this from various points in the Bible and have put them together in a particular way and have made it into a set of claims that, if you look at the biblical material itself in its own literary context and in its own social, cultural, historical context, nope, that's not what I was talking about. But somebody pulled this phrase out and put it together with another phrase and said, this is talking about what God has always been doing through all eternity. Now, yes, Rose.
So when Jesus talks about his Father,
Yep.
there's two. There's two of those things. When during his baptism, when the dove comes down, and that's described as the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So there's three. The word Trinity, I know, is not used in the Bible, but I see examples in the Bible. So the word is not used.
The word Trinity is not used. That is correct. But the doctrine of the Trinity, talking about three persons, co-eternal, etc., that is not talked about. When you have the Spirit being described in the baptism of Jesus, is the Spirit something that is separable from God? Is that something different from the Father?
I think when you say three persons, yes, there's a problem. I talked to, we were over worship at the Muslim. And there was a lady there that I asked a question about what was even baptism. And so we got in a conversation and she said, well, you all believe in three gods. And I said, no, we don't. And but so I said, and I can't explain it because to me, there's a mystery to that. But just that someone thinks that we believe in three gods is misunderstanding ourselves for her.
But please notice also in the story of Jesus' baptism, there is not talk about three gods. There's not, there is story of one God. who speaks at the time of Jesus' baptism. And Jesus isn't described as being divine in any way, shape, or form in that story, nor is the Holy Spirit described as something that is different from God. No, there's a lot of weaving that we've done, or that others within Christianity have done, in putting together the affirmations that we have.
Why is even the concept of a God or Holy Spirit descending even in that story?
And that is the right kind of question to ask. What is it trying to get across? Is this point at which Jesus receives his call or ministry, and understanding that that call is something that comes from God, that his ministry is something that is viewed as being empowered by God. God's Spirit comes upon him, not something separable from God, not a part of God, but another way of talking about God. God empowers Jesus, whom God calls at that. There are certain ways that we have become accustomed to think about this language, but one of the most important questions for me, as I've spent a whole lot of years just trying to wrestle with Bible and Christian theology, what's it trying to get across? And how does that impact my relationship with God? And the question, when I read something and have been accustomed to thinking about it in one particular way, is how else might this be understood? And frankly, Muslim friends have been one of the biggest help to me in terms of reading biblical materials. Because when I read biblical materials and think through, okay, how is it that I can describe what's going on here to someone who doesn't share my own Christian background? And I find, that's really rough, because I've been accustomed to think in particular ways. How else might somebody read this? How else might they automatically see what's going on in the story? And frankly, is there something really important in their reading of it that I should pay attention to? These are all really important kinds of things. Before talking a little bit more about Bible and doctrine of the Trinity, one of the biggest problems in terms of Trinitarian language is this language about three persons. In our culture, whenever we talk about persons, you're a person, you're a person, you're a person, you're a person, you're a person. Separate beings that are there. Persons, if our automatic way of thinking about One God in three persons, okay. 15 persons? I mean, how many persons are here? How does one fit oneness and threeness together? To say one God in three separate beings, that just seems like a nonsensical kind of statement. But when we realize that, oh, there's some history here behind this word persons, and in the formation of the doctrine of the Trinity, one of the key pieces of vocabulary, personae, that got used, was borrowed from Greek theater, Greek drama. And I expect many of you have seen these masks that tend to be a symbol for Greek drama. Personae is the term that was used for these masks that in Greek drama, a person would hold mask up in order to either express a different character in the story. Okay, one actor playing multiple characters, and now I use this mask, and now I use whatever, this one. I know they look alike, but no, or one character, an actor playing one character who has different emotions, different feelings at different points. Okay, holding up the mask is a way of communicating with the audience. It is a form of communication. And the mask, one God through expressing God's self through three different masks. Oh, okay. That's got a little more possibility to it. Personae was one of these economic trinity kinds of ideas. Bottom-up thinking, okay, and looking at how people experienced something, not focusing on what you can't see behind the mask, but looking at what you can see. One God whom we encounter through three different masks. That's standard economic trinity kind of language. That's where this three persons idea came from.
After in there, I would replace with understand. We understand the whole of it by looking at those three different masks.
Yes, that encounter, understand, okay, the masks are there to help someone, guide someone to think, to understand in a particular kind of way. Yes, absolutely. With this, okay, when we recognize that, we only deal with God through masks. Only deal with God through masks. And yet, we speak of, there's a consistency, there's a wholeness, there's a unity that holds God together, even though all we're able to see is the Mass. Remember, in terms of talking about beliefs, beliefs never, ever, ever fully explain what's going on in our encounter, our experience of God. Our beliefs always only take us just so far. The masks only take us just so far. When we put a label on each of the masks, that really hasn't helped us understand the fullness, full reality of God. That's something that continues to play out in an ongoing relationship with God. Now, doctrine of the Trinity is something that only Christians can or should use. It is a huge problem to think that, oh, somehow the folks over at AMI, they've got to understand the doctrine of the Trinity. No, there's no reason in the world why they should understand the doctrine of the Trinity. That would be handy, perhaps, for understanding why you and I do and say some of the strange things we do. But no, there's no reason why they would need to understand that. Over at Temple Israel, no reason why they should ever use the term Trinity. Because Trinity is something that is a purely internal kind of thing in which is really understandable for those who think that Jesus is the best clue for understanding what God is like. The best clue for Christians to understand what God is like. If they don't have that presupposition, then the doctrine of the Trinity can't possibly mean anything. There are many Christians who assume that their task in terms of dealing with non-Christians is to make them understand the doctrine of the Trinity. It's not necessary. We can share what doctrine of the Trinity means to us, and they can decide whether that's helpful, whether that's not helpful. But no, it's not going to be useful for them to adopt that language. And once they use that language, aha, now they really know what's going on. No. They're not likely to know a thing anymore once they've encountered that language. Doctrine of the Trinity is not found in the Bible. It's not just a matter that the word Trinity is not there, but all the other stuff that goes with that is not there. Yes, the word Father, the word Son, or the term Holy Spirit is used, but the way in which those words are used in the Bible is not the way the doctrine of the Trinity talks about those words. For example, those three expressions are found throughout all parts of the Christian Bible. The Christian Bible, which includes the Jewish scriptures, does use the term Son of God. It's there. But no, it does not have any of the connotations that are present in terms of how the Trinity talks about that. Israel, the people of Israel, are called Son of God. King David and all the kings descended from King David are called Son of God in the Jewish and Christian scriptures. When in the story of Jesus' arrest and ultimately his execution, when Jesus is quizzed over whether he is Son of God, the issue is whether he's a Davidic king. It has nothing to do with whether Jesus is a divine being or not. In fact, in the entire Bible, whenever the term Son of God is used, it is not used to refer to someone who is co-equal, co-eternal with the Father. Never does it have that meaning. Jesus talks about blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called literally sons of God. Oh, Jesus regularly speaks about other people as being sons of God. He teaches a prayer asking his followers to call God Father. Oh, if you call God Father, I wonder what that is intended to imply about those who are calling God Father. Oh, implies that, oh, they are sons, daughters, children of God. And Gospel of Luke presents Jesus talking about people who are generous. Oh, as being sons of the Almighty. People who love their enemies. Sons. Yes, the New Testament calls Jesus Son of God, but not what the doctrine of the Trinity means by Son of God. And at some point, we need to wrestle with, oh, what does the Bible say about Son of God, rather than just assuming what we perhaps assume terms mean there. Spirit of God is not something separate from, oh, Father. Yes, in the Hebrew Bible, occasionally God is called Father. But Father, Father of Israel. Father is simply a term for God, all of God, not, oh, an aspect of God, not a person that is within God, not a person that is different from spirit. Spirit is language that frequently is used for talking about God's dynamic interaction, ongoing interaction with people in the present. That's really worthwhile kind of language. But no, it's not talking about something other than what the word God talks about. It's not talking about a subset of God. It's talking about God's own activity. Took 3 to 4 centuries to develop the doctrine of the Trinity after the ministry of Jesus. Jesus would have absolutely been dumbfounded, completely confused, to be told that, oh, somehow he was second person of the Trinity.
Number 2.
That just wouldn't occur. At best, the Bible provides the raw materials that were used to formulate the doctrine of the Trinity. And in the process of forming the doctrine of the Trinity, it transformed the materials in that process too. Yes.
Was there some material that they considered that didn't make it into the Bible that helped them define the Trinity?
Not really. There are all sorts of material. I mean, the Bible gets put together over many years. It wasn't until 367 that the books that we speak of as being in the New Testament. It was 367. That was the first time that those 27 books, no more, no less, were part of the New Testament.
In the book of Saints, when the doctrine of the Trinity came about.
It's right in that period of time. Yes. Yep. The Council of Nicaea, 325, was kind of the start for really putting things into the language that Christians recognize now. But the word Trinity first formulated shortly before the year 200. It's the first time that word ever was used. And there were a variety of different ways in which Trinity was talked about, even once the word was formulated. Just a variety of things that were there. Yeah, Rose.
So it seems like we're attempting to explain something spiritual when we only live in a physical world. Is that what you're trying to say with bottom up? We're trying to use our physical descriptors to describe something that's above that, but we cannot describe a physical descriptor.
Correct. We are always fumbling around. And because we're always fumbling around, okay, there's always something more that we haven't been able to say. This isn't to detract at all from language of the Trinity. As I think the language is doing something very important, and I'll try explaining that in a moment. But no, we're down in the weeds as we're trying to talk about these things. Yes.
This era of the early to the mid 300s.
Yep.
Seems as though the time in which there was a push to codify, standardize belief. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes. And there was a good political reason for doing that. Constantine needed to have the empire united. And there were all these strange, differing groups of Christians who were saying different things and arguing with one another. And that wasn't helpful for pulling the empire together. And that's why Constantine is the one who calls for the councils to put together first the Nicene Creed, subsequently revisited, revised a few years later, because what they tried to come up with, expressing the one, nope, that didn't work. There were still squabbling, because they're still dealing with the weeds. And that continues.
As we are today.
Today,
Yes, absolutely.
Jewish faith, don't they, in their Shema, don't they say, the Lord our God is one?
Yes.
But I've heard it said that that one does not translate into an absolute one, it is a multiplicity. It's a word that's not, it reflects onto more than.
Well, it all depends on whether you talk with somebody who has been, those who use Jewish language but have been influenced by a good deal of Christian ideas. And there's justification for saying that one in the Shema is not referring to an undifferentiated blob, just kind of sitting there. There's more involved than that, and yet no, within Judaism there is very little leeway in terms of dealing with other kinds of things that are there. Now, if you want to really have your mind blown, deal with Jewish mysticism and Kabbalistic tradition, in which you have all sorts of strange things that are the Sephirot within the oneness of God. But that's
You could see it being complex, but it's very complex.
yes, although within Christian theology, and particularly as drawing upon the philosophy of Aristotle as the key mechanism for doing this, the key term was God is simple.
It's not simple.
Simple. And but it's simple in that all sorts of things are going on. Think, for example, of in the history of the cosmos. In an instant before the Big Bang, you have all the mass of the universe, supposedly at a mathematical point, has no dimensions. There is no such thing as atoms. There's no such things as subatomic particles. Those aren't even possible yet. It's the temperature, the pressure means that all of the things we're accustomed to thinking about aren't even possible yet. It's simple because it hasn't solidified out into other kinds of stuff. There are, today we talk about 4 basic forces, fundamental forces. No, the 4 fundamental forces didn't exist yet in that particular setting. Our descriptions don't work for that. That's the simplicity in which you can't have all these other things being talked about. Okay. How in the world can we try understanding the doctrine of the Trinity? I said I'm taking a UCC presupposition here. That no, you don't need to know about what perichoresis, okay, is in talking about the doctrine of the Trinity. You don't need to talk about the difference between substance and essence. You don't need to talk about the difference between substantia and ousia, okay, a Latin term, a Greek term.
Screen.
Oh, yeah.
Look in.
Battery low. What's going on?
Bad.
Hopefully that'll do it. Thank you. There are all sorts of things that you don't need to know. You don't need to know about the coherence of all the works of the Trinity, which is an important principle in Trinitarian doctrine. But I'd like to talk about Trinity with an analogy. And this analogy is spelled out in the handouts that I passed out, but I'd like to just quickly go through this. I want to use an analogy of getting to know another person. Entering into a relationship with another person. And I suggest in the material, using someone that I'm simply calling Alex. Is Alex male, female? Makes no difference. Okay, principle is the same. When I get to know Alex, not just know about Alex, not just have information about Alex, but get to know Alex, be in relationship with Alex. Now, there are certain kinds of words, certain kinds of actions that Alex says, does, that for me just really typify what Alex is like. And that's so important to me that, if somebody else says, I just saw Alex do this. And I can respond, yeah, sure sounds like Alex. No. Those characteristic words and actions are really important in terms of my getting to know Alex, becoming familiar with those, having exposure to those. That's really crucial. However, second point, I also know by virtue of that relationship that Alex is always far more than those characteristic words and actions. Sometimes I get surprised. Sometimes I got this. I'm shocked. It just blows me away what occurs at that point. There is always a depth that is present with Alex, in which I'm always going to be experiencing surprises as long as I continue to deal with Alex.
And he's going to be doing the surprises within himself.
Yes. There's a principle that is sometimes talked about a way of analyzing relationships called the Johari window, in which there are things that I know about myself, and y'all know about me. I mean, it's just blatantly obvious. Okay, I know those things. You know those things. There are some things that you know about me that I don't have a clue about. There are some things that I know about me that you have no idea. And there are some things about me that you don't know, and I don't know either. Okay. There's that indeterminacy that is there. So yeah, that's all there.
And added on that over a lifetime, we change. And so the person we or others knew
Correct.
at 20 years of age is going to be very different at 60, at 80.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hopefully.
Spoken like a true spouse. Third thing, in getting to know someone, not just know about, but getting to know them, we get transformed when we're in relationship. In that interaction, if we've really interacted with another person, have gotten to know them, there is no possible way that we are exactly the same as we were before entering into that relationship. There are changes that occur. Okay, that basic analogy is something that I would like to apply to the doctrine of the Trinity. And with this use of the analogy does not give us a particular set of affirmations that we are going to automatically come up with. It doesn't prescribe those things, but rather it is simply pointing at the relationship itself. This is a bottom-up kind of thing, dealing with how we get to know someone and what occurs in that process, not something that we automatically know. I suggest that the doctrine of the Trinity should be viewed as a set of rules for speaking Christianly about God. You can talk about God in all sorts of ways. But first rule, and this kind of starts with the middle of the doctrine of the Trinity. Whatever Christianly speaking we do about God, for us as Christians, we always need to make reference to the figure of Jesus. Characteristic words, actions that we see in Jesus that, we make the assumption because those words, actions have grasped us. They fit what we see life as being. Those characteristic words and actions we see in Jesus are things that always need to be a part of our God talk as Christians. Other people, hey, they learn about God from other kinds of sources. And if we look at what they learn about God and what we learn about God, paying attention to what occurs in relation to Jesus, we'll find that an awful lot of things are going to overlap. No, it's not going to be exactly the same, but we're going to be able to see a lot of connection. It's not that, oh, because they haven't dealt with Jesus, they're clueless about what God is like. Nope. Jesus, growing up in a Jewish family, knew a heck of a lot about God. And in that family, he absorbed from others things that shaped his characteristic words and actions. But one key thing, okay, just as I can speak of Alex's characteristic words, actions, I can speak about Jesus' characteristic words and actions, and yes, I make a jump there saying, you know, this is part of what matters most. This is what life is about. It's not because Jesus holds a particular title that to pay attention to those, but rather have been grasped by those. It's something that I, in my humanness, am impacted by. I also must, as part of my Christianly speaking about God, I also must recognize that God is so much greater than everything that I happen to encounter in Jesus. God is more than Jesus' teachings, Jesus' actions. I learn important stuff from those, but God is always more. And our God talk needs to recognize the limitations, the possibilities that are there through encountering Jesus, but also the limitations that are there. And to recognize that, oh, as part of our God talk needs to spread to other areas of knowledge, other areas of experience that we have in life. Okay, all of that is important, in which I take characteristic words and actions of Jesus, put that together with a recognition that there's more. There's more. This drives me toward the more. God talk. The third point, God talk is meaningful only when it connects with people, with how people are being transformed in relationship. Things that we use that we label with perhaps the term spirit. That transformative present action that is going on. That's a key element in terms of shaping our God talk. There isn't a single thing there that talks about a doctrine, a belief that you must have when we are doing our talk about God. When we're talking Christianly about God. But by golly, we better be paying attention to all of those things. Otherwise, we basically create idols for ourselves. We create things that end up trapping us rather than allowing us to deal with how expansive God is and the relationship with God is. Yes.
I don't know where this is in the New Testament, but I can't remember, but supposedly Jesus said, those who call me Lord, Lord, will not find the kingdom of heaven. And it seems like that number 3 would be what he's talking about.
Mhm.
because
Yes.
He did not want, he was not the Father. He somehow, in his life, had a deep communion with the Father, which you could only find by going within. So I just think it's very interesting that the movement that's out there now has a real significant, I mean, I keep seeing things on cars and trucks, Jesus only, it seems to be a new
Mhm.
only Jesus.
Mhm.
Which I think he would what? He would object to that. That's
Okay.
worshiping someone other than the Father.
Yes. I think if we, the benefit of the recording, a problem of looking at things through a lens of Jesus only. All talk about God as creator, okay, as being, well, to use the panentheistic term that we used last week, of all the universe, all reality being within God. To recognize that, there is a need to continue growing, applying, expanding, deepening our understanding of God, and hopefully conversations such as this giving us an opportunity to push the boundary on that. That's a helpful kind of way. Let's just we have about 10 minutes left here. Let's deal with your reaction to this. Okay. This doesn't look a whole lot like Trinitarian theology, the way you've encountered it before. But you're welcome to critique this any way you want, or to pick up other things that have occurred during the past 4 weeks as we've talked about imagining God beyond belief. Okay, beliefs don't do it.
I am imagining a 20-year-old college student named Denny sitting in church when his grandmother speaks out. What is his reaction? One of embarrassment? One of go get him? One of what did that little boy think?
Well, that little boy of 20. I was accustomed to my grandmother and her ways of confronting things that made no sense to her. And I said, hey, much of what Grandma said, I think she was right about. What I think she was wrong about was saying, there is therefore, if it doesn't come, if it's not stated in the Bible, it's knowledge that isn't worth having. And that's a problem. And this particular model, with respect to the top item there, being informed by characteristic words, actions of Jesus. I remember being a couple of years after that, being involved in a church, and at that point, I was then a theology major with double minors in biology and chemistry. But I was in a church in which we had a seminary student who was doing an internship there, and one of the greatest lines that the pastor had as seminarian was about to head into the worship service, and the seminarian was going to be preaching, and the pastor said, "Don't forget to mention Jesus." And yeah, Jesus. Okay, it's not prepackaged material that Jesus doled out. It's my dealing with Jesus' words and actions in which I'm putting together that understanding of, oh, that's a characteristic action. You might end up seeing the characteristic words and actions in a somewhat different way. And we don't need to argue it through which one of us, who alone has the correct characteristic words and understandings of Jesus. No, Jesus is more than particular labels that we put on. But to be in a position of recognizing that, hey, there's something that is fallible, there's something that is problematic with absolutely everything that I say. And there's always room for growth. There's always room to build on things and to get corrected, to take another zigzag in terms of trying to better express what's going on. That's important. My grandmother was not God to me.
What was the pastor's reaction to her?
Stunned silence. He didn't know what hit him. And, in that particular denomination, anti-Trinitarian thought was not an unusual kind of thing, but it was not present among most folks in the denomination. And, I don't recall what he said, but he kind of had his mouth hanging open. Mark.
Can you identify other Christian sects that don't have a Trinitarian view?
There are groups that have differing kinds of views within Latter-day Saints, Mormons. Okay, they very firmly speak about Father, Son, Holy Spirit as three separate beings. That's a striking kind of thing. Not really. Three separate beings who all think the same thing. And that's always been a bit of a problem for me in terms of that conception. But within LDS teaching, that's an important kind of thing that is there. There are a number of churches that recognize, and I think this is what occurs within a UCC context, recognizes that particular theological doctrines they not only carry positive possibilities, but they also carry negative possibilities. And UCC has identified a number of negative things that occur in labeling Jesus in particular kinds of ways. And thus, the statement of belief on the UCC webpage skirts around certain kinds of things because they think those statements create more difficulties than they help solve. So, but you know, there are many groups that
What about Southern Baptists?
Southern Baptists are fully Trinitarian. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Where you landed with the rules for speaking Christianly here.
Yep.
I recalled back on the first session when you were talking about meaning, value, and purpose.
Yes.
You had the kind of smart aleck statement of any talk about God that doesn't deal with value, meaning, and purpose, and the way that people actually live their life is meaningless and a waste of time and effort.
Yep.
And I really liked how you landed the plane here with that. I'm curious if these are the rules for speaking Christianly, is there room for not speaking Christianly as somebody who prescribes to the Christian beliefs because of the set of guidelines in your mind?
Within the Christian church, many of us, myself included, don't speak Christianly about God. And we start talking about particular theological ideas without grounding those in terms of having them come out of a faith relationship, dealing with value, meaning, purpose, and instead just claiming something. The Athanasian Creed, the Father is eternal, the Son is eternal, the Spirit is eternal. Well, what's the reason for speaking about God as eternal? There are reasons for that relate to faith relationship, but just throwing out those terms without making the connection, I think ends up really being hollow. It doesn't get us anywhere. And yes, each of us fall into that that kind of trap very often. But if we can if we can be coming back to those things, and by the way, the characteristic words and actions, the things that make them, that any of us choose as characteristic, are going to, I expect, deal with value, meaning, purpose. At that point, it's going to be dealing with issues of, hey, what really matters to living in relationship to God? And that's the strength of that approach.
Do you know the date? I got an email yesterday. I didn't do on my phone. That we're going to have a chance to talk about all these things over at the Tri-Faith with people from the other communities. It sounded like in small groups. That's the next one of the wisdom. Yeah.
Wisdom workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Once a month, there are things, and it's not, the first one was this past Thursday, and most of the evening was conversation at tables among people gathered talking about particular issues, and in that case, dealing with immigration and how Jewish, Christian, and Muslim scriptures deal with immigration. But those will be advertised coming up.
Remember the date, but.
Yeah.
Since we've moved here, I've realized that we're taking these classes outside of it. We've had very little actual sitting down and talking about our visions. Care, contrast, what do you see?
Mhm.
What do I see?
Yeah.
It just really hasn't happened.
Yes,
There was a lot of the initial leaders talking to each other with us watching and so on.
mhm.
But so that's why I brought that up. is
Yes.
because I'm hoping it's more of a. I mean, I've learned so much from all of this and the other classes that now I feel like I could actually say something significant.
The issue of being able to meet with our Jewish and Muslim neighbors here on the Tri-Faith campus and talk about similarities, differences, and frankly things that are just part of ordinary life, parenting kinds of stuff, and deciding how you use your finances. I mean, there are a whole lot of things that are there, and that's something that I think Tri-Faith needs to grow into very, very strongly. And we're kind of past the COVID issues and the leadership vacancies and so on, and I'm hoping that yes, those kinds of things will be an important thing. We're at the end of our time. Thank you so much for being involved these past 4 weeks. I've enjoyed working with you.
Do you know when the next Tuesday session is or whatever it might be?
I do not. This is one of those things that that wasn't included in that. So.
The wisdom